The people who influence us most don't tell us what to do. They tell us who we are. We generally assume that control looks like a direct order, maybe a threat. But the reality is so much more subtle. Why does a simple compliment like, "You're so loyal," often feel like a trap you can't escape? Well, this is the core paradox of identity priming. That moment your own self-image becomes a weapon used against you.
Just think about that for a second. We're always on the lookout for the obvious stuff, right? The boss telling you to stay late, a parent laying down the law. But the most effective, most insidious control, it doesn't come as an instruction. Nope, it comes as a description. It's this subtle architecture they build around your ego, shaping who you think you are, so that your actions just naturally fall right in line with what they want. And this gets us right back to that strange, unsettling feeling. You get what sounds like praise. You're the rational one, you're such a pillar of strength, but instead of feeling great, you kind of feel cornered, right? It feels like this performance that you suddenly have to live up to, forever. This is the whole paradox we're digging into today. How the very words we use to build ourselves up can be twisted into the bars of an invisible cage. And there's a name for this whole process. It's called identity priming. It's a well-documented cognitive shift where someone steers your behavior not by asking you to do a thing, but by assigning you a character to play. They turn your own self-concept, your own sense of who you are, into the very mechanism of their control. And the craziest part? Once it's in place, you start managing yourself for them. So, how in the world does this actually work? Let's break it down. First, we're going to look at how a simple compliment becomes a cage. Then this idea of a gifted identity. After that, we'll get into the weeds with the 3-step architecture of control, explore the psychology that makes us fall for it, and then, the good part, we'll walk through exactly how to reclaim your own story and become the author of your own life. All right, let's start with that paradox. We're all conditioned to see compliments as a good thing, right? As an affirmation. But in the world of identity priming, these so-called positive labels are actually the first move in a system of management, one that's designed to be as effective as it is invisible. To really get this, we first need to see how these identities are gifted. And this isn't some rare, complex manipulation, okay? You see this dynamic everywhere. In corporate cultures that praise the one employee who always goes the extra mile, in restrictive families that assign rigid roles to everyone, and definitely in high-pressure mentorships where a protege is basically molded into a specific image. In all of these cases, someone needs you to act a certain way without ever having to ask you directly. And these labels are always presented as a gift. They're framed as proof of your unique, irreplaceable value. You know the lines. You're the only one I can count on. You always keep a level head. But what's really happening here is that your social status, your very sense of safety and belonging in that group, is being tied directly to a specific role you're now expected to play. If you lose the label, you risk losing your place. It's a raw deal. And this right here, this illustrates the fundamental shift perfectly. On the left, you've got authentic autonomy. Your actions come from your own internal compass, your values, your needs, what you want. But on the right, you've got the assigned identity. And here you act to stay in character, to live up to a label someone else gave you, almost always for their benefit. Identity priming is the whole process of quietly moving you from that left column over to the right. So how is this identity actually built? It's not random. It's actually a pretty systematic 3-step pattern that controllers use to basically write your script for you. They outsource their needs directly to your own psyche. The whole thing unfolds in 3 clear stages. First, they set what's called the positive anchor. Then they start to collect the behavioral tax. And finally, they achieve something called identity enclosure. So let's break down exactly what each of those means. Step 1 is the positive anchor. This is where the controller uses what you could call a heavy compliment. It's not just good job. It's a statement about who you are. You're the rational one, or you're such a loyal partner. This is an absolutely crucial first move because it forges this powerful link in your brain, connecting that specific label with feelings of safety, approval, and yeah, even a little hit of dopamine. You feel seen, you feel valued, you feel special. And then comes the bill. This is the behavioral tax. This is the point where that assigned identity starts to cost you something real. It's the moment you start sacrificing your own needs just to stay consistent with the label you accepted. You're exhausted, but you stay late because, well, you're the reliable one. You bite your tongue in an argument because you're the peacemaker. You are now paying a tax in your time, your energy, your well-being, all to maintain an identity that was gifted to you. And that leads to the final stage, identity enclosure. And honestly, this is the masterstroke.
The control is no longer external. It has become totally internal. You literally stop asking the most fundamental question of autonomy, what do I want? And you start asking, what would a loyal person do? Or what would a strong person do in this situation? At this point, the controller's job is done. They don't have to push you anymore. They just have to occasionally remind you of who you are, and your own mind does all the heavy lifting.
So why is this so devastatingly effective? Why do we surrender our own autonomy for a label? Well, the answer lies in this powerful transaction between the controller's motivation and our own very human psychological vulnerabilities.
I mean, just look at this dynamic. The controller's motive is dead simple: effortless compliance. They want you to do what they want without having to ask or argue or use any force. Their tool? Social labeling. On your side, the vulnerability is our powerful, deep-seated need for belonging. We all want to be valued members of our tribe. And the mechanism they exploit is our brain's own cognitive consistency bias, that deep need to act in ways that are consistent with what we believe about ourselves. This is where cognitive dissonance becomes the actual lock on the cage. Our brains are hardwired to avoid the stress of holding two contradictory ideas, like I am a reliable person and also I am saying no to this request. To get rid of that discomfort, we almost always choose the path of least psychological resistance. The pain of acting against our assigned identity starts to feel way worse than the pain of the exploitation itself. And so we comply. Not because we're forced to, but just to keep our own internal story straight.
So just understanding this system is the first step to dismantling it. Now that we've seen the architecture of the trap, let's talk about the escape plan. There are clear, actionable steps you can take to get your psychological sovereignty back and start writing your own script again.
Your defense against identity priming really boils down to two main awareness tools. First, you need to conduct what we'll call the label audit. And second, you have to assert your fundamental right to be inconsistent. Trust me, these two mental shifts are the keys to unlocking the cage. The label audit starts with this one incredibly powerful question. The next time someone calls you loyal or rational, just pause and ask yourself, is this word a description of me or is it a requirement for me? This simple question reframes absolutely everything. It lets you see these labels not as unchangeable truths about your character, but as data points, information about how someone else sees you or maybe how they need to see you. And that leads right to the second tool, which is a really powerful internal boundary, asserting your right to be inconsistent. The whole trap of identity priming depends on your fear of contradicting the label. By giving yourself permission to be inconsistent, you take your freedom back. You don't have to be the strong one today if you feel vulnerable. You don't have to be the peacemaker if a boundary needs setting. You're allowed to act based on the facts of this moment, right now, not some predefined character role. Ultimately, what this all comes down to is a shift in how you see yourself. It's about moving from being an object in someone else's game to being the subject of your own life. You're a conscious agent with the power to choose your actions in every single moment. And recognizing that, well, that's the foundation of real autonomy. So let's bring all this home. If there's one core lesson to take away from this whole process, it's about recognizing the boundaries of your own identity and, more importantly, who gets to define them. Always remember this: your identity is a private territory. It is not a public contract that you sign every time you accept a compliment. The moment you understand that compliments can be blueprints for compliance, you develop an immunity to this kind of manipulation. You can accept praise graciously without accepting the hidden terms and conditions that come with it. Because in the end, this is what it's all about. You are not a character playing a part in someone else's story, confined to the traits and behaviors they've decided for you. You are the author of your own actions, and every single moment is a fresh page.